She said, "Don't bother me for 7 days." So I didn't. I just made sure the whole world did. The morning she left, perfume hanging in the doorway, I synced her smartwatch like a security camera and pointed the feed at her parents' room. Not rage, precision. I'm Ethan, a systems engineer. If truth is a network, I know where to plug in. 3 months ago, a 2:47 a.m. ping whispered, "Can't wait to taste you again." I didn't wake her. I woke up. Silence became my tool. Credit cards, locations, a cabin at Tahoe, a boss who smiles too long. Data drew a map she swore didn't exist. Tonight, I invited her parents for slideshow night. Lights down, wine poured, TV ready. When the screen flickers, it won't be vacation photos. It will be live. And if you think this is a story about a cheating wife and a vindicated husband, stay. What walked through that door turned vengeance into something colder. Portland looked soft in the rain, like the city kept everyone's secrets. Lauren and I lived in a 2-story Craftsman on Hawthorne Street, wrapped in cedar and silence. From the outside, we were fine, 2 professionals with matching coffee mugs and a golden retriever named Milo. Mornings smelled like burnt toast and her perfume drifting through the hallway. She'd hum old pop songs while scrolling her phone. I'd check server logs before breakfast. We didn't fight, not anymore. We'd outgrown shouting, replaced it with quiet efficiency. Calendar invites, meal preps, separate playlists. Every Thursday, she went to yoga. Every Friday, I worked late. The rhythm felt safe, reliable, almost mechanical. And I told myself that's what maturity was. Knowing love doesn't have to roar. Sometimes it just hums in the background. But every machine hums differently right before it breaks. I just didn't know I was already listening to the sound of something failing. I met Lauren 3 years before that night at a tech conference in Seattle. She wasn't supposed to be there. She filled in for a colleague, she said. I noticed her before she spoke. She moved like someone who belonged everywhere. While others checked emails, she laughed at the keynote speaker's bad jokes, and somehow it didn't feel forced. When she finally turned to me, her smile carried the kind of confidence that makes you forget your own name. I was presenting a session on network integrity, dry, technical, predictable. She asked the only question that made me pause. What happens when the system stops trusting its own data? I told her, it collapses. She nodded slowly, like she understood more than the room did. We had coffee after, then dinner, then every excuse to keep talking. I thought she saw something steady in me. Truth is, she saw a system she could rewrite, and I let her. Lauren lived in color. I lived in code. She could walk into a room and change its temperature just by laughing. I could spend an hour adjusting the angle of a desk lamp until the light felt balanced. She loved noise, crowded bars, loud playlists, spontaneous road trips. I loved patterns, quiet streets, structure, the comfort of knowing what happens next. She'd tease me for it. "You analyze dinner like it's a spreadsheet," she'd say, stealing fries from my plate. I'd smile, pretending that predictability wasn't my defense mechanism. In her chaos, I found fascination. In my order, she found stability. For a while it worked, the storm and the stillness creating something that felt like harmony. But harmony isn't peace. It's tension held in tune. And when one side stops playing, the sound doesn't fade, it snaps. I used to think she loved my precision. Now I realize she was only testing how far it could bend before breaking. 3 months before everything unraveled, the first crack appeared. Small, invisible, like a line under fresh paint. It was a Tuesday night. Lauren was late coming home, said traffic was insane on I-5. I believed her. Portland traffic could swallow hours, but when she finally walked in, she smelled like wine, not rain. Her laughter was too light, rehearsed. I remember asking how dinner with her team went. She said, "Oh, same boring work talk," and brushed past me to the shower. Steam filled the hallway, carrying a perfume I didn't recognize. I told myself it was just new lotion, a new phase, anything but what my gut whispered. Later, when she kissed me goodnight, there was a pause, half a heartbeat of hesitation that didn't exist before. That's how trust dies, not in arguments, but in small silences that last a little too long. I didn't say a word. I just started listening more carefully to the quiet. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of night where the city outside feels half asleep and every sound echoes. I woke up because of a faint vibration on the nightstand, her smartwatch lighting the dark. 2:47 a.m. The screen glowed once, long enough for me to read it. Can't wait to taste you again. No name, just a flame emoji flickering like a dare. For a second I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard her breathing beside me, steady, calm, innocent. I stared at the message until it disappeared, swallowed by the black glass. My pulse didn't rise. My hands didn't move. Engineers are trained to observe before reacting. So I watched. The glow faded, the room returned to silence, and she shifted slightly in her sleep, mumbling something I couldn't make out. I whispered back, not sure to her or to myself, "Okay." That one word felt surgical, clean, final. That was the night love became data waiting to be analyzed. I didn't confront her. That's not how I'm wired. Anger is noise, and noise hides information. So I stored it, the message, the timestamp, the way her hand twitched when the watch buzzed. In the morning, I made coffee like always. She smiled, kissed my cheek, said she had an early meeting. I nodded, memorizing every word, every micro-expression. Engineers build systems to predict failure. I was building one inside my marriage. That day, I tested silence. How long could I keep a secret that big without it consuming me? Turns out silence isn't absence, it's a microscope. It magnifies everything. The way she typed faster when she thought I wasn't watching, the sudden laughter during work calls, the faint scent of someone else's cologne on her scarf. Each clue slid into place like code compiling itself. And still, I said nothing. Because once you ask the question, the experiment ends. I wasn't ready for results, only observation. It's strange how betrayal doesn't arrive like thunder. It seeps in, quiet, disguised as routine. Over the next few weeks, Lauren's habits started to drift. She used to hum while cooking. Now she cooked with headphones in, shutting out the house. Her phone, once left on the counter, was suddenly glued to her hand. She laughed more, but not with me. The kind of laughter that comes from private jokes whispered through a screen. She bought new clothes, for work events, and started wearing lipstick shades I'd never seen before. Small details, harmless on their own, but together they formed a pattern, a rhythm I couldn't ignore. When she talked, her eyes darted away mid-sentence, as if editing herself in real time. Even Milo, our dog, noticed. He'd wait by the door longer, confused, tail low. I documented it all. Dates, behaviors, inconsistencies. That's how engineers cope. When emotion becomes chaos, turn it into data. Data never lies. People do. Silence became my weapon, polished through years of being the man who fixes, not feels. When something breaks at work, you don't yell at the server, you study the fault. I treated her the same way. Every lie she told became a data point. Every smile that didn't reach her eyes, a timestamp. People think silence is weakness. It isn't. It's storage. It's where you keep the pain until you know what to do with it. I learned that long before Lauren, when my father walked out and my mother never asked why. You survive by listening, not reacting. So I listened to her new laughter, her late-night showers, her vague apologies that sounded rehearsed. I didn't chase truth. I let it come to me. And it did, drip by drip, through careless words and mirrored screens. The hardest part wasn't pretending I didn't know. It was realizing how easy pretending had become. Silence doesn't just protect you, it trains you. There's a moment when confrontation feels pointless, when words lose precision, and all that's left is observation. That's where I arrived. I stopped asking, "Where were you?" or "Who were you with?" Those questions invite lies, and I already had enough of those. Instead, I decided to watch, to turn my marriage into an experiment with a single variable, truth under surveillance. It wasn't anger driving me anymore. It was curiosity, the same instinct that makes you take apart a machine just to see how it works. I told myself I wasn't seeking revenge, just clarity. But clarity, I've learned, is a dangerous addiction. Once you start seeing patterns, you can't unsee them. Each glance, each message, each secret smile became a pixel in a picture forming slowly in the dark. And when I finally saw the image for what it was, I didn't feel pain, just inevitability. Talking changes nothing. Watching changes everything. When you spend years securing networks, breaking one isn't hard. It's discipline, not skill. Lauren's smartwatch was synced to her iCloud, and her iCloud was backed up to a shared home server I'd built myself. She never asked how it worked. She just loved that everything stayed connected. That night, while she was asleep, I logged in through the admin console, bypassed two-factor authentication with a code she'd once texted me. Irony tastes metallic when you realize love leaves digital fingerprints. Within minutes, I had everything: photos, location history, messages, even her heartbeat data. I stared at the graph pulsing across the screen, steady and unbothered. Mine wasn't. I mirrored her watch feed onto my laptop, encrypted the channel, and labeled the folder Observation Mode. It didn't feel like spying. It felt like maintenance. The system was corrupted, and I was debugging it. Somewhere in the back of my head, a voice whispered that I'd crossed a line. I silenced it, just like everything else. Most people think hacking is cinematic: green code, flashing warnings, adrenaline. It's not. It's patience. It's knowing where trust ends and automation begins. Lauren's devices all ran through the same Apple ID, protected by convenience. I cloned her keychain to a sandboxed virtual machine, used a Python script to decrypt backup tokens, and mapped her device endpoints. Her smartwatch synced through Bluetooth LE. I rerouted it via a proxy to my laptop, capturing live telemetry in real time. Every text, GPS ping, microphone pulse, archived automatically. I set cron jobs to update her photo library every midnight, cross-referencing metadata with geolocation data. The process was flawless, elegant even. Watching the logs scroll felt like staring into the pulse of a person who didn't know she was being dissected. Engineers crave control. We build systems to predict behavior. That's all I was doing, predicting. But somewhere between code and conscience, the lines blurred. I wasn't securing a network anymore. I was dismantling a human being. I wasn't angry. I was curious. Anger is heat. It burns fast and blinds you. Curiosity is colder. It sharpens the edges. I wanted to know how deceit looks when no one's watching, how someone breathes when they lie. Every file I opened, every data point I decrypted, felt less like invasion and more like exploration. I wasn't trespassing. I was documenting. Her world unfolded in patterns: recurring calls to a private number, geotags near the same lakeside cafe, photos cached and deleted within minutes. She was meticulous, I'll give her that, but not enough. Nobody hides perfectly in a system designed to remember. I studied her life like a case study in entropy, how order decays, how affection turns transactional. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the monitor, eyes blank, pulse steady. That's when I realized I wasn't hunting proof. I was studying collapse, line by line, the anatomy of trust breaking in slow motion. The data didn't lie. It sang in timestamps and coordinates. I stitched together her calendar exports with GPS pings and built a timeline. Every departure, every detour, every bathroom stop that didn't match an office building. I overlaid her routes on a map and watched the heat of her movements form a trail away from our neighborhood toward the lake. Then there were the messages. Not the casual texts, but the encrypted threads that vanished after reading. I recovered fragments, headers, delivery receipts, the occasional emoji, and used them as anchors. A private number that always rang at odd hours, a deleted voice memo cached on the backup, a string of short-lived temporary emails. I converted all of it into a graph: nodes of contact, edges of movement, weights for frequency. Patterns emerged like constellations. The graph highlighted a recurring destination, one that matched a booking on a card: Lake Tahoe, 2 occupants, paid in full. When you map behavior long enough, randomness resolves into intent. And intent, in my experience, is the clearest kind of proof. Knowledge is a drug disguised as control. The more I knew, the more I needed. Every time her phone synced, a rush hit, dopamine wrapped in data. I'd watch her battery drain in real time, see her texts come and go like heartbeats, trace her movement from one cell tower to the next. It felt omnipotent, godlike, to know everything and say nothing. She laughed at dinner. I knew who texted her before she did. She said she was working late. I saw her car parked outside a restaurant miles away. The information didn't hurt. It exhilarated. It made me feel alive in a way love hadn't in years. Power is quiet, seductive. You start thinking you're just observing, but really, you're scripting reality. Every secret she thought she owned, I'd already archived. Every lie, time-stamped. I told myself I wasn't manipulating her life, just documenting it. But that's how every tyrant starts, believing surveillance is just another form of truth. It was a routine audit, or at least that's what I told myself. Her credit card statements synced automatically into our shared drive, a relic of transparency from better years. I scrolled through the usual clutter: groceries, gas, salon visits. Then one transaction stopped me cold. Sierra Pines Retreat, Lake Tahoe, 5 nights, 2 guests, prepaid. The timestamp matched the week of her upcoming girls' trip. My cursor hovered over the receipt. 2 occupants, not refundable. I checked the booking confirmation hidden in her email archive, signed under an alias I recognized instantly. Her boss, Mark Peterson. I sat back, staring at the monitor. The room hummed with the sound of my own restraint. Tahoe wasn't a coincidence, it was choreography. All her alibis fit perfectly inside that reservation. I exported the document, labeled it primary node, and closed the file. Proof didn't change anything. It only solidified what I already knew. The truth was now scheduled. All I had to do was press play. The confirmation was almost cinematic. Too clean to be coincidence. I checked Lauren's group of friends, the usual circle that justified her yearly girls' trip. Sarah, her closest confidant, was always the loudest online. Every brunch, every beach photo, every caption soaked in hashtags. That morning, she posted a story. "Miss you, girl. Wish you were here," under a sunlit patio somewhere in California. The timestamp read day 1 of the supposed trip, the same day Lauren had texted, "Landed safe." Except Sarah was home, not traveling. I replayed the clip, watched reflections in her sunglasses, triangulated the skyline behind her. It was Portland. Sarah hadn't gone anywhere, which meant Lauren hadn't either, not with her. The story vanished 24 hours later, but it didn't matter. The metadata was already stored, time-stamped, cross-verified. One careless post had dismantled an entire lie. I didn't feel relief or rage, just clarity, the cold satisfaction of knowing the math checked out. The equation of betrayal finally balanced. That night, the air in the house felt thinner, as if the walls themselves had been listening. She called from the road, speakerphone on, cheerful, predictable. "The girls say hi," she said. I glanced at the muted feed from her smartwatch. No background chatter, no movement, just static and silence. Her GPS dot pulsed nowhere near the airport. She was lying, cleanly, effortlessly, like she'd practiced. I almost admired the precision. I replied the same way I had for years. Calm, supportive, unreadable. "Glad you made it safe," I said. She thanked me, voice soft, unaware that every syllable was being recorded, cataloged, dissected in real time. When the call ended, I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen. The evidence wasn't just digital anymore, it was physiological. My heartbeat slowed, my breath evened out. There it was. Proof without confrontation. The truth, pure and unsentimental. And once you confirm the lie, you can never go back to the comfort of pretending you don't know. Once the lie was undeniable, something inside me shifted. I stopped being a husband and started thinking like a producer. The plan formed with mechanical precision, storyboarded in silence. Her parents adored her. They defended her before anyone even accused. That blind loyalty made them the perfect audience. I decided the truth wouldn't be told, it would be shown. I spent nights configuring the stream, a hidden live feed routed from her smartwatch to their smart TV in Denver, encrypted, private, invisible. The technology was flawless, the intention was not. I rehearsed it in my head like a script. Dim the lights, pour the wine, press play. Not vengeance, I told myself, just transparency. But even I could hear the lie in that reasoning. Every camera angle, every sequence, every detail was crafted with the precision of someone who'd stopped feeling. When you design exposure as spectacle, you're no longer seeking justice, you're directing humiliation. And I had just built the stage. Somewhere between planning and execution, something fundamental in me went quiet. The part that used to ache, hope, forgive, it simply powered down. I watched myself from a distance, detached, efficient. She'd text goodnight from a cabin she hadn't yet reached, and I'd respond with a smile emoji while coding the final stream relay. My hands moved like they belonged to someone else, someone colder. That's when I understood the transformation wasn't sudden. It had been waiting. Every act of silence, every recorded lie, every late-night line of code was a rehearsal for this version of me. I wasn't her husband anymore. Husbands ask, plead, negotiate. Producers curate, control, decide when the truth gets released. I set the date, the dinner, the timing, every variable optimized for impact. Emotion became an outdated program, one I no longer needed to run. That's when Ethan Cole died. The producer was born, and he didn't plan on mercy. The hardware was already in their house. Lauren had bought her parents a 70-inch smart TV for Christmas 2 years earlier. Convenience was her religion, connectivity her gospel. I exploited both. Using a backdoor through their Wi-Fi router, I created a private channel masked as a streaming app update. Once the TV connected, the feed linked directly to her smartwatch camera via a secure relay server I built under a fake IP in Colorado Springs. No alerts, no logs, no trace. To them, it would look like Netflix loading, buffering truth instead of fiction. I tested it one night at 2 a.m., the screen flickering from my laptop in Portland to their living room miles away. It worked perfectly. Real time. Crystal clear. She wouldn't even know she was broadcasting. I sat in the dark, watching the empty cabin through her lens, feeling a strange calm. Surveillance had become intimacy, and intimacy had become power. The stage was ready. All I needed now was an audience. There's a purity in control that borders on divine. No guesswork, no chaos, just inputs, outputs, precision. I watched the stream stabilize, frame rate perfect, latency under a second, every metric aligned, every connection secure. It was beautiful, in a way only engineers understand, the poetry of systems obeying. I felt my pulse sync with the signal, steady, absolute. For the first time in months, I wasn't lost in uncertainty. I owned it. Every heartbeat she took, every step, every movement was mine to witness. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about mastery, the art of orchestrating what others thought was chance. The irony wasn't lost on me. She once said I was too predictable, too structured. Now that structure was her prison. I leaned back, watching her data flow across the screen like a river of light. The world felt still, orderly, obedient. For a man who'd lost love, total control felt dangerously close to peace. The next step was human, something no algorithm could automate. I picked up the phone and called her parents. Her mother answered first, bright and unsuspecting. "Ethan, how are you two?" she asked. Her warmth almost made me hesitate. Almost. I smiled into the receiver, steady and polite. "I'm good," I said. "Actually, I wanted to invite you both to dinner this Friday. I made reservations. At home." There was a small laugh on the other end. She always found my phrasing formal, old-fashioned. Her father chimed in, pleased. "Finally, it's been months since we've seen you two." I told them I had something special planned, a surprise from Lauren's trip they'd love. They promised to bring wine. When I hung up, the silence that followed felt surgical. I looked at the TV across the room, its dark screen reflecting my face like glass. Reservations at home. They had no idea the meal I'd prepared wasn't food. It was truth, served live. Friday arrived with unnerving precision. I spent the day arranging every detail as if ritual could disguise intent. The table was set for 4, white plates, polished silverware, the kind of symmetry Lauren used to admire. I chose Cabernet. Her parents preferred red with dinner. The candles were unscented, steady, controlled. Lighting mattered most, soft, indirect, warm enough to comfort, dim enough to conceal the flicker of the TV. I cued a jazz playlist, Miles Davis, quiet, unintrusive. Background calm for foreground chaos. Every sound, every color was calculated to lower their guard. To them, this was family. To me, it was staging. I checked the feed once more. The cabin camera showed wine glasses, a man's hand, her laugh. Perfect timing. I looked around the room, the glow, the order, the illusion of hospitality, and felt something close to pride. Not joy, not guilt, just the satisfaction of a system performing exactly as designed. Dinner was ready. So was exposure. As I polished the last glass, I remembered every quiet insult her father had ever wrapped in concern. He was the kind of man who believed advice was dominance. The first time he said it was at our wedding rehearsal, half drunk, half proud. "If she ever leaves you, son, it'll be your fault. Women like Lauren don't walk away unless you push them." Everyone laughed. I didn't. He'd repeated it through the years, each version sharper, disguised as fatherly wisdom. When she got a promotion, he'd clap my shoulder. "Keep up, Ethan. Don't let her outgrow you." When we bought the house, he joked, "She's the reason the bank said yes." Each remark was a pinprick, small enough to ignore, cumulative enough to scar. Tonight, those words finally had weight. The man who'd said I'd lose her would watch how. Not through hearsay or rumor, through proof. He'd see the truth unfiltered, and I'd see his certainty fracture. At exactly 6:03 p.m., the feed came to life. A faint vibration from her smartwatch triggered the connection. Routine, automatic, unaware. The TV screen in front of me flickered from black to motion. A blurred ceiling fan, a slant of afternoon light, the sound of laughter. Lauren's voice. I felt my chest tighten, not from emotion but from calibration, confirming signal strength, frame stability, audio clarity. The picture steadied. She was pouring wine, hair loose, phone face down beside the glass. A man's voice entered frame, familiar, confident. Mark. Her boss. My cursor hovered over the recording button, though it was already running. Reflex, not hesitation. I watched her tilt her head back, laughing at something I couldn't hear. The image was intimate, unfiltered, painfully alive. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I was intruding or orchestrating. The line didn't exist anymore. The watch was her eye, and through it she was finally showing me everything she'd hidden. The camera adjusted, autofocus catching details I couldn't unsee. Wood-paneled walls, a stone fireplace, 2 wine glasses half full. Lauren sat cross-legged on the couch, wearing a sweatshirt that wasn't hers. His. Mark moved behind her, casual, familiar, hand resting on her shoulder as if it belonged there. Their laughter sounded rehearsed, like people pretending to be carefree. She leaned in to show him something on her phone. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. My pulse stayed level. Engineers don't flinch at data, they interpret it. I noted gestures, distance, body language, the choreography of betrayal. She looked younger, lighter, free of the weight she carried at home. For a split second, I understood why she left. Not because she stopped loving me, but because she stopped being afraid to. Then the realization curdled. The truth wasn't liberating. It was confirmation of failure. I minimized the feed, took a breath, and reopened it. Observation required endurance. I had plenty. I didn't feel pain, just confirmation. Pain needs uncertainty, questions like why or how could she. I had neither. Watching them together didn't stab, it settled something. The hypothesis was proven, the equation balanced. She wasn't mine, and maybe she never had been. That clarity was almost soothing. I studied their movements the way I'd study a malfunctioning circuit. Identify the flaw, document it, prevent future errors. Lauren smiled differently with him, less restrained, almost innocent. It was strange how betrayal could look so pure when viewed from the right distance. I paused the feed once, staring at her frozen mid-laugh. The pixels caught her in perfect focus. Alive, happy, unreachable. For a moment I wanted to delete everything, let her fiction live. But curiosity outlasts mercy. I hit play again. The sound returned, the laughter resumed, and I whispered to no one. There it is. Not anger, not grief, just proof. Clean, undeniable, and colder than justice. My finger hovered above the key longer than it should have. Recording felt like crossing a moral line, but then again, morality had already left the room. I pressed record. A red dot appeared in the corner of the screen, small and steady, pulsing like a second heartbeat. The sound of their voices filled the space around me, laughter bleeding through the speakers, too close, too alive. I adjusted the gain, balanced the audio, zoomed in slightly. Years of working with systems made the process instinctive. Optimize, stabilize, archive. I wasn't documenting infidelity anymore. I was composing it. Every frame became deliberate, every angle a choice. She thought she was unseen, and maybe that made it art. My reflection on the monitor looked foreign, expressionless, efficient. The red light kept blinking, patient, obedient. Somewhere deep inside, a voice murmured that this wasn't evidence anymore. It was cinema. And for the first time in my life, I understood the thrill of directing truth. When the file began saving, a new calm settled over me, the quiet rhythm of inevitability. I watched the footage buffer, frame by frame, until the system confirmed the live relay was ready. No errors, no latency, everything synced. On the TV screen across the room, her parents' reflection shimmered faintly in my imagination, unaware of the role they were about to play. Truth, by itself, is sterile. It needs witnesses to have weight. I wasn't chasing confession anymore. I was curating revelation. I'd built the perfect conduit, an invisible channel where deceit would expose itself in real time. I leaned back, letting the glow of the monitor light my face, and listened to their laughter echo through the feed like a soundtrack. The moment felt sacred, almost cinematic. Years of silence were about to end, not with confrontation, but with evidence. I glanced at the red recording light, steady as a pulse, and whispered to myself, now the truth has an audience. At exactly 7:12 p.m., I switched the input on their TV from cable to the hidden channel. The screen flickered once, the logo of a streaming app they recognized appearing briefly before dissolving into the live feed. Lauren's parents sat across from me at the table, smiling, wine glasses raised, oblivious. "You'll love this," I said, my voice even. On screen, the cabin camera adjusted focus, her hand pouring wine, Mark leaning in, their laughter faint but clear. Her mother tilted her head, confused. "Is this?" she began, but stopped as recognition set in. Her father squinted, leaning forward, disbelief tightening his jaw. I didn't speak, I didn't blink. The feed ran smoothly, 60 frames per second, crystal clear. The silence in the room thickened, stretching into something unbreathable. Her mother covered her mouth, her father's face drained to chalk. I kept my gaze fixed on the screen, steady, detached. I had done it. The transmission was flawless. Truth was live. Her mother was the first to react. A sound escaped her. Not quite a scream, not yet a sob, something raw and wordless. She pressed her hand against her chest as if trying to slow her own heart. Her father stayed frozen for a few seconds longer, his eyes narrowing, denial fighting logic. Then it hit him. What is this?" he demanded, voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. The air between us thickened. I didn't answer. On the screen, Lauren leaned into Mark's shoulder, oblivious, laughing at something private. Her mother whispered her daughter's name like a prayer turned accusation. Her father stood, knocking over his chair, face trembling between rage and grief. "Turn it off," he said, though his eyes never left the image. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. I could feel their world collapsing in slow motion, exactly as mine once had, but I didn't flinch. I let them watch the truth do its work. Silence is the purest sound of justice. It doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives and fills the room, heavier than noise could ever be. The moment her father stopped shouting, the quiet took over. Thick, suffocating, absolute. The TV light flickered across their faces, turning them ghost pale. Her mother's hand trembled against her glass. The wine rippled, dark and still. I listened to that silence the way others listen to music. It was the sound of realization. Slow, undeniable, irreversible. For years they'd looked at me like a man who'd failed their daughter. Now they were watching the real failure unfold in high definition. I didn't need to say a word. Words would have diluted the truth. The feed kept playing, laughter echoing from the cabin, painfully out of sync with the room's stillness. In that frozen air, justice didn't feel righteous or redemptive. It felt cold, mathematical, balance restored through suffering measured in seconds. And I just kept watching. On screen, Lauren laughed, head tilted back, eyes bright, the kind of laughter that once made me believe in us. It sounded the same, but now it felt foreign, weaponized. Her joy ricocheted off the walls of the dining room, cruelly alive. Across from me, her mother began to cry, quietly at first, then breaking into short, stifled gasps. Her father's jaw trembled, eyes fixed on the screen as if staring long enough could rewrite what he saw. The disconnect was unbearable, her happiness framed against their devastation. Two parallel realities colliding in the same room. I watched both, the woman who lied, the parents who believed, and me, the conduit between their worlds, neither innocent nor guilty, just aware. Lauren's laughter rose again, sharp, sparkling, unbothered by the grief it was now producing miles away. Her mother whispered, "Make it stop." But I didn't. Because in that moment, it wasn't cruelty keeping me still. It was the recognition that justice, once started, doesn't stop on command. No one moved. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint echo of laughter still bleeding from the speakers. I let the footage play in real time, uncut, unmerciful. Her father's hand gripped the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles whitened. Her mother stared down, tears dripping onto the linen. I said nothing. The silence grew longer than comfort could survive, bending time until every second felt deliberate. That's the thing about silence. It doesn't just fill a room. It rearranges it. The TV light pulsed with each movement from the cabin, her voice flickering against their faces like a confession written in flame. The longer no one spoke, the more unbearable it became. I watched them teeter between disbelief and despair, and still, I didn't intervene. Suspense is born not from motion, but from the absence of it. And in that long, perfect stillness, justice held its breath and refused to exhale. On screen, the laughter softened into something quieter, closer. Lauren shifted on the couch, knees brushing against Mark's. The movement was subtle at first, an innocent lean, a shared glance, but the air between them thickened, visible even through pixels. She reached for his hand, hesitated for a heartbeat, then didn't pull away. His thumb traced her wrist like it belonged there. I heard the catch in her breath, the tremor she used to have with me. Her mother turned away, covering her eyes. Her father cursed under his breath, half rage, half disbelief. I didn't move. The camera stayed steady as they kissed, slow, unhurried, devastatingly real. It wasn't lust that made the room go cold. It was recognition, the tenderness, the rhythm, the familiarity of gestures once mine. Every pixel screamed what words never could. Across the table, her mother sobbed. On screen, Lauren smiled against his lips. I sat perfectly still, a surgeon observing his own operation, knowing the patient was already dead. I didn't blink. I let them watch, every second of it. Their daughter's voice, soft and distant, filled the room like an echo from another life. Her father's breathing grew ragged. Her mother's sobs turned to whispers of prayer. Still, I didn't move. The instinct to stop, to spare them, flickered once and died. Mercy felt irrelevant. I had lived with blindness long enough. Now they would live with sight. The TV light pulsed across the table, reflections of movement no one wanted to see. My hands rested calmly beside my wine glass, steady, deliberate. I wasn't enraged. I wasn't proud. I was resolved. There's a strange serenity in ruin when it finally becomes undeniable. The truth had shape now, a body, a heartbeat, and I was forcing them to witness it breathe. Her father shouted my name once, a plea or a warning. I couldn't tell. I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen, and the screen stared back. The room felt smaller, as if the air itself recoiled from what it was forced to hold. The scent of wine, candle wax, and fear mixed into something sharp, metallic. Every breath hurt. Her mother sat motionless, tears pooling on the tablecloth. Her father's eyes burned. Anger, betrayal, disbelief, all collapsing into a single glare aimed at me. "Why would you show us this?" he whispered, voice cracked and dry. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Words would only dilute the gravity of what filled the room. On screen, Lauren and Mark disappeared from frame for a moment, leaving behind the sound of movement, fabric, skin. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was toxic. It clung to us, seeped into the walls, hummed beneath the low jazz still playing from the corner speaker. No one dared move, as if motion might make it worse. I realized then that truth doesn't cleanse. It contaminates, and we were all breathing it in. Then, without warning, the sound on the feed shifted. A door slammed open somewhere off camera, startling even me. Lauren's laughter stopped mid-breath. Mark looked up, frowning, confusion clouding the scene. Then came new voices, male, rough, drunk. One of them laughed loud and slurred, the kind of laugh that doesn't belong in any private moment. "Yo, Mark! Didn't think you'd start without us," another shouted. My stomach turned cold. The frame wobbled as the watch caught movement, shadows crossing the cabin floor, bottles clinking, heavy footsteps. Lauren stood, tense, a hand to her chest. "What the hell is this?" she asked, her voice cracking. Mark moved toward the door, trying to sound in control, but the laughter drowned him out. On the TV, her mother gasped. Her father leaned forward, horrified. My fingers tightened around the remote. This wasn't part of my script. I'd designed exposure, not chaos. But the feed kept rolling, and whatever had just entered that room, it wasn't mine to stop. The image jolted violently, the smartwatch tumbling sideways. For a moment, all I saw were blurred shapes, frantic motion, and the fractured sound of shouting. Mark's voice barked something, "Get out!" Then a crash, glass shattering, followed by Lauren's scream. One of the men laughed again, a sick, hollow sound that made my skin tighten. The frame caught flashes, feet stumbling, a bottle spilling across the rug, hands grabbing at someone just off camera. The laughter turned to arguing, then panic. Her voice broke through. "Stop it! Mark!" Another impact, the feed dipping into static. Across the table, her mother covered her ears, sobbing. Her father stood, his chair toppling backward. I froze, remote in hand, heart pounding but mind detached. This wasn't revelation anymore. This was collapse, raw, unscripted, unstoppable. The picture flickered once more, a final scream, a blur of movement, then black. No sound, no image, just the faint echo of chaos I'd unleashed and could never control again. The feed came back for a few seconds, long enough to paint hell in motion. 5 men stumbled through the doorway, bottles clutched in their fists, laughter spilling into shouting. One kicked over a chair, another slammed the door shut behind them. The air inside the cabin thickened with alcohol and adrenaline. Mark tried to stand his ground, arms raised, voice trembling between command and fear. "What the hell are you doing here?" he shouted. No one listened. One of the men grabbed the wine bottle from the table, took a long drink, then smashed it against the counter just to hear it break. Lauren backed away, pressing herself against the wall, eyes wide, voice trembling. "Mark, what's happening?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. The scene dissolved into chaos, shoving, yelling, the sound of furniture collapsing. Through the camera's disoriented lens, I caught glimpses of faces, grinning, intoxicated, predatory. The illusion of control shattered. I wasn't watching a confession anymore. I was witnessing a crime. At first, I thought the terror on her face was guilt, but it wasn't. It was realization. The way she looked around, desperate, disoriented, told me this wasn't part of her plan. Her hands trembled as she grabbed Mark's arm, begging, "Tell them to leave!" The camera caught her flinch when one of the men slammed a bottle on the table beside her. The sound was sharp, final. Mark's bravado crumbled. Fear bled through his voice. "Lauren, get upstairs," he said, but the doorway was already blocked. In that instant, I saw it clearly. She wasn't cheating anymore. She was trapped. My chest tightened, the calm precision I'd carried for weeks collapsing under the weight of consequence. I had built this window, opened this feed, orchestrated exposure, and now I couldn't look away as it turned to danger. Her fear wasn't my vindication. It was my reflection. I wanted justice. Instead, I had created the perfect audience for her destruction. The feed fractured into noise, pixels scattering, sound tearing like paper. Voices overlapped, distorted by compression, shouting, pleading, then the high crack of breaking glass. Someone yelled Mark's name, followed by a dull thud, another crash, another scream. The smartwatch swung wildly, catching flashes of chaos, shards glinting on the floor, shadows colliding, the outline of a man falling. Lauren's voice cut through the static for a second, raw and terrified. "Stop, please!" Then silence, just the hiss of interference. I stared at the screen, frozen, waiting for the signal to restabilize, but the image only pulsed with fragments, red, white, motionless. My hands hovered above the keyboard, useless. I'd wanted the truth exposed, but this was something else entirely. Truth without control, justice without order. On the TV, the feed finally bled to black. Somewhere inside the static, I thought I heard her call my name. Or maybe it was just the system shutting down. I didn't move. The room around me blurred into stillness, soundless except for the low hum of the TV searching for a lost signal. My fingers went numb. The remote slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a dull plastic thud that felt far too loud. Her parents were frozen, their faces lit by the empty blue glow. Her mother whispered her daughter's name again, a plea swallowed by the static. I just stood there, eyes fixed on the dead screen, mind refusing to process what I'd unleashed. I had imagined many outcomes: shock, guilt, vindication. But not this. Not violence. Not fear. Not the possibility that she might never walk out of that cabin alive. My body wouldn't obey, couldn't reach for the power button, couldn't even blink. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating, until all I could hear was the echo of glass shattering somewhere miles away, and the quiet realization that control was gone forever. "Turn it off!" Her mother's voice tore through the silence, raw and panicked, breaking whatever trance we were caught in. She lunged toward the TV, hands trembling, desperate to kill the image even though there was nothing left to see. The screen stayed black, reflecting her face back at her, pale, streaked with tears. "Please, Ethan, turn it off," she screamed again, as if the act could rewind what had already happened. Her husband didn't move. He stood rigid, eyes locked on the blank screen, chest heaving but expression hollow. The man who'd always had something to say, judgments, advice, corrections, was suddenly mute. His world, his pride, his daughter's perfection, all erased by a flickering feed. I wanted to tell them it was over, that I hadn't meant for this, but the words caught somewhere between guilt and disbelief. The silence returned heavier than before, settling on all of us like dust after an explosion. The truth wasn't off. It was burned in. The screen finally went dark, leaving only the faint blue standby glow that pulsed like a dying heartbeat. That light filled the room, soft but merciless, washing over our faces and everything it touched. It was the color of aftermath, the hue of something that couldn't be undone. Her mother collapsed into the nearest chair, sobbing quietly, her hands clutching her chest. Her father still stood, staring at the reflection of nothing, as if the truth might reappear if he waited long enough. I sank back into my seat, the remote lying at my feet, useless. The hum of the TV was the only sound left, a sterile reminder of how precise destruction could be. No fire, no chaos, just that calm blue glow where a life used to be. I wanted to move, to speak, to undo it somehow, but the stillness wouldn't let me. The broadcast had ended, but the silence, it kept playing. By sunrise, the story was already bigger than any of us. The police cars arrived first, blue and red lights cutting through the fog outside my window. The sirens were distant at first, then everywhere. I hadn't slept. I just sat there, replaying the static in my head, each burst of noise another unanswered question. The news broke before noon. Corporate executive found dead in Lake Tahoe cabin. Multiple witnesses, 5 detained. Woman hospitalized. Her name wasn't released, but I didn't need confirmation. The headlines spread like wildfire: affair, violence, scandal, speculation. Reporters camped outside the company, cameras feeding on tragedy the way I had fed on truth. Every channel replayed the same words: a night of excess turned deadly. They didn't know about the feed or my part in it. They didn't need to. I watched the coverage in silence, the irony sickening. I'd wanted the truth exposed to the world. Now the world was dissecting it without mercy. By evening, the details surfaced. Lauren was alive. Mark wasn't. The police statement was clinical. 1 fatality, 1 victim in critical condition, cause under investigation. The footage from the cabin, what little they recovered, was sealed as evidence. I sat at my desk reading every update line by line until the words blurred together. Survived. That single word felt heavier than death. She hadn't escaped unscathed. Broken ribs, a concussion, bruises across her arms, but she was breathing. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt nothing. The news anchors spoke his name with solemn respect. Mark Peterson, beloved executive, tragically killed. They called her a woman connected to the incident, never saying who she was. I shut the laptop. In every version of the story, she was a shadow, blurred, nameless, protected. But I knew her face, her fear, her scream. The world would mourn him. I would remember her. And neither of us would ever be innocent again. It took a full day before the realization settled, not as shock, but as weight. Revenge had never been about fire or fury. It had been about control. And now that control had killed someone. I'd built a system designed to expose a lie, but what it really did was accelerate disaster. If I hadn't mirrored her watch, if I hadn't forced truth into the open, she wouldn't have panicked, wouldn't have met him early, wouldn't have walked into that room before the others arrived. Every decision, Every calculated move had led her there. I'd told myself I was simply watching, never interfering. But observation changes outcomes. Any engineer knows that. I hadn't revealed truth. I'd weaponized it. The feed was my creation, and it did exactly what I built it to do: strip away illusion. I just never expected to be one of the illusions it destroyed. Justice didn't collapse that night. It evolved into guilt. For the first time, control slipped away, not abruptly, but like sand leaking through a fist, quiet, unstoppable. Every system I'd built, every line of code, every rule that kept my world in order, dissolved into noise. The monitors still glowed on my desk, feeds still connected, processes still running, but none of it mattered. The data meant nothing now. It couldn't rewind what had happened. I tried to rewatch the footage, to analyze it like a corrupted file, but the moment the static filled the screen, my stomach turned. I shut it down. The silence afterward felt foreign, like standing in a room where gravity had shifted. I had lived my entire life believing precision could protect me, that if I controlled every variable, I could predict every outcome. But emotion isn't code. People don't debug. And as the last line of order unraveled inside me, I finally understood. The one thing I thought I'd mastered had mastered me instead. She came home 3 days later. No warning, no call, just the sound of a car door closing in the driveway, the rhythm of footsteps she once shared with me. I opened the door, and there she was, Lauren, smaller somehow, wrapped in an oversized coat, her face pale under the porch light. Bruises bloomed along her jaw, a cut near her lip. Her eyes didn't rise to meet mine. They drifted past me, scanning the house like a stranger entering a crime scene. We didn't speak. The silence between us wasn't the same one I had used as a weapon. It was heavier, fragile, human. She stepped inside, the faint smell of antiseptic following her, and dropped her keys onto the counter next to the smartwatch. The same watch that had seen everything. I thought I should say something, an apology, a question, anything, but the words died before they formed. Some truths are too large to fit inside language. So I just watched her breathe. We stood in the kitchen, the same space where everything once felt ordinary. Coffee mugs, sunlight, quiet. Now it was a crime scene without police tape. She finally looked at me, eyes hollow, voice a whisper scraped raw. "You did this." The words didn't land like accusation. They landed like fact. I swallowed, the sound loud in the silence. "You lied first," I said. It came out calm, rehearsed, like a line I'd been waiting to deliver. She flinched, not from volume, but from the precision of it. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "You think that matters?" she asked, almost laughing, but there was no humor left in her. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to argue. Two people who once built a life together now stood as evidence against each other. She looked around the room one last time, then at me, anger, sorrow, and fear folded into one impossible stare. "We're both monsters," she whispered. I didn't deny it. She left just after midnight. No shouting, no slammed doors, just the quiet rhythm of packing. I listened from the hallway as zippers closed, drawers opened, the faint rustle of fabric against suitcases. Every sound was deliberate, final. She didn't bother turning on the lights. The house was lit only by the dim glow of the street lamp bleeding through the curtains. When she walked past me, she didn't stop. Her eyes didn't hold anger anymore, just exhaustion, like someone waking from a nightmare they no longer wanted to understand. At the door, she paused long enough to whisper, "Don't follow me." I didn't. The engine started, tires crunching against wet asphalt, and then she was gone. Again. But this time, the absence felt different. Not loss, not relief, just a hollow equilibrium. I stood in the empty doorway long after her taillights disappeared, the night swallowing everything. Silence filled the space she left behind, colder than truth, heavier than guilt. When the sound of her car faded, the quiet that followed didn't feel like peace. It felt like vacuum. The house was still but not empty. It was heavy, thick with everything that had been said and everything that hadn't. I waited for remorse to arrive, but it didn't. Guilt requires empathy, joy requires hope, and I had neither left. I walked through each room like a ghost revisiting a life already lived, her mug still on the counter, a faint outline where her picture used to hang. I touched none of it. The air was stale, untouched by breath or laughter. For the first time, there was nothing left to fix, nothing left to analyze, no data, no variables, no outcome to measure, just stillness. I wasn't relieved and I wasn't in pain. I was neutral. The kind of quiet that doesn't soothe, it sterilizes. They say revenge changes you. They're wrong. Revenge doesn't change anything. It just removes what's left to feel. Weeks passed in fragments. The house sold quickly, too quickly, as if even the walls were eager to forget us. I packed what little mattered into 2 boxes and left Portland behind. The city had become a living archive of mistakes. Every street, every cafe, every raindrop carrying an echo of her name. I took a new job in Denver, a systems analyst position. Quieter, simpler, anonymous. No one there knew about the story that had once consumed headlines. No one looked at me like a cautionary tale. My new apartment overlooked a parking lot and a strip of indifferent sky. Evenings stretched long and sterile. I ate alone, worked alone, slept without dreams. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't ache. It just persists, steady as breathing. I told myself I'd built a cleaner life, one without noise or emotion. But sometimes, when the city lights blinked through the blinds, I realized I hadn't escaped anything. I'd just relocated the silence. The new apartment never felt like home, just a storage unit for a man pretending to live. The furniture was minimal, the walls bare, the air unbothered. But on the kitchen table, I'd kept one thing from before, her smartwatch. It sat there like evidence left behind after an investigation closed but never solved. The screen was cracked along the corner, faint scratches tracing over the place where the feed once lived. Sometimes at night, it would buzz faintly. An update, a system ping, maybe a ghost of a signal searching for the phone it used to belong to. I never touched it. I couldn't. It was both relic and reminder of what I'd built and what it cost. The light from the street lamp would catch its glass just right, reflecting the room around it. Empty, quiet, sterile. I told myself I kept it to remember, but deep down I knew better. I kept it because part of me still needed to be watched. I used to think revenge was a way to balance the equation, to close the circuit and end the current of suffering. But it doesn't end anything. It loops. It sustains. Revenge doesn't heal. It preserves pain, embalms it, keeps it breathing under glass so you can visit it whenever you need to feel alive. Every night, I'd sit across from that smartwatch and realize I hadn't punished her. I'd memorialized her. The footage, the silence, the aftermath, all of it became a museum of what I'd lost, curated by the man who refused to move on. Justice had been my excuse. Obsession was the truth. There's no satisfaction in proving someone wrong when the proof destroys you too. The worst part isn't what I did. It's that I can't undo the precision of it. I'd built the perfect system to reveal a lie, and now it was me living inside it, preserved, cataloged, archived. An exhibit titled Control. Life reduced itself to patterns again, predictable, frictionless, hollow. I woke up at 6, made coffee I never finished, walked to the same office with the same polite faces. My colleagues called me reliable, efficient, dependable, the kind of man who never missed a deadline. They mistook numbness for discipline. My apartment stayed clean, almost sterile. No photographs, no clutter, no trace of warmth. In the evenings, I watched the city through the window, its lights flickering like data points on a screen, alive but meaningless. Sometimes neighbors laughed in the hallway, a sound so distant it might have come from another life. I never joined them. The noise reminded me that the world had moved on while I remained static, frozen in the calm I once mistook for peace. There's a difference between solitude and silence. Solitude breathes. Silence holds its breath. My life had become the latter. Perfectly still, perfectly ordered, perfectly without pulse. It happened late one night, long after the city had gone quiet. I was at my desk, half asleep over a screen full of code, when a faint vibration rippled through the apartment. At first, I thought it was in my head, just memory echoing, but then I saw it. The smartwatch on the table lit up, its cracked screen glowing pale against the dark. Incoming call. The name read only, unknown caller. The buzzing filled the silence, steady, insistent. My pulse quickened, not with fear, but recognition. I stared at it, the way you might stare at a ghost, trying to decide if it's real. The vibration grew louder, echoing off the walls. I reached out, hand hovering above the glass, close enough to feel the faint hum of power still alive inside it. Then I stopped. Let it ring. Let it fade. The light dimmed, the sound dissolved, and the apartment returned to stillness. Some ghosts, I decided, don't want answers. They just want to be remembered. I used to imagine revenge as heat, bright, consuming, righteous. But heat fades. What remains is colder. Revenge isn't fire. It's frost. It doesn't burn. It freezes. It slows everything to stillness until nothing moves, not even guilt. Justice doesn't feel like victory. It feels like silence after the storm, when the wreckage is yours to inventory and there's no one left to blame. I look around this quiet apartment, the screen dark, the watch lifeless, the air unmoving, and realize I got everything I wanted. Truth, proof, consequence, and none of it changed anything. She said, "Don't bother me for 7 days." So I didn't. I just made sure the whole world did instead. Now there's only the echo of that choice, 7 days stretched into forever. Outside, the wind hums against the glass, low and distant. On the table, the smartwatch trembles once more, a faint vibration against the dark, then stillness, fade to black, end card.